When tragedy struck a Cleveland neighborhood, most people turned to the news, unsure of what would come next. But one name kept surfacing. Not a politician, not a city official, but a quarterback. Shedeur Sanders, a rising football star, didn't just offer thoughts and prayers. He showed up. But instead of praise, his actions sparked something unexpected: backlash. While families were picking up the pieces after a devastating apartment explosion, Shedeur was rallying his team, organizing a relief event, and using his platform to raise awareness. For most, that's the definition of leadership. But not for everyone. One local reporter, Mary Kay Cabot, questioned why a quarterback would bother with something so unnecessary. In her eyes, the only thing that mattered was performance on the field. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about a community in need. It was about the clash between purpose and perception. Can an athlete be more than just a player? Should they? What followed was a series of events that not only challenged the traditional role of a quarterback, but exposed how disconnected some people are from what really matters. And it all started the moment Shedeur decided to act. It started with chaos. A sudden explosion tore through the Rainbow Terrace apartment complex in Cleveland, leaving families devastated, homes destroyed, and an entire neighborhood in shock. Sirens filled the air. Smoke blanketed the skies. Within minutes, lives were changed forever. And while the news spread quickly, one person who wasn't in town at the time heard about it the same way everyone else did, through his phone. Shedeur Sanders was away, on a short break before training camp. But his reaction was immediate. The first thing I'm doing when I get back, I'm going straight to the community. There were no press releases, no PR teams planning a photo op, just a decision, a promise, and within days, he delivered. He didn't wait for someone to tell him what to do. Shedeur put together a relief effort to help the people most affected, families who had lost everything, children who no longer had bedrooms to sleep in, and parents wondering how they'd get through the week. While others stayed silent or kept their distance, he leaned in. He showed up, not to promote his name, but to offer his presence, his support, his heart. Because for Shedeur Sanders, being a quarterback means more than just calling plays. It means leading, on and off the field. Most athletes, especially young quarterbacks, spend their off days focused on perfecting their game. Film study, footwork, drills. That's the expected routine. But Shedeur Sanders isn't wired like most. Instead of staying behind closed doors, buried in a playbook, he stepped directly into the heart of a wounded community. And he didn't come empty-handed. Shedeur immediately organized a full-scale event. Free food, supplies, support, and most importantly, human connection for the families impacted by the Rainbow Terrace fire. It wasn't corporate-sponsored or padded with promotional fluff. It was raw, real, and personal. He used his social media not to brag, but to broadcast a call for help. Show up, donate, give what you can. And people did. He brought in high-profile guests like Cleveland's own star defensive tackle and local boxer Montana Love. But it wasn't about star power. It was about solidarity. For many of the residents, this wasn't just a charity event. It was the first time since the fire they felt seen. Kids who had lost everything were suddenly smiling, playing games, and feeling like kids again. Families in survival mode were given a few hours of peace. And at the center of it all, a quarterback in street clothes, handing out food, laughing with children, listening to stories of heartbreak, and offering a simple message without saying much. I'm here. I care. No cameras forced him to do it. No contract told him to show up. Shedeur acted because he knew the community needed him. And in doing so, he quietly redefined what leadership in sports can look like. Just as the community was starting to heal, the backlash began, and it came from a place no one expected. Mary Kay Cabot, a longtime Cleveland Browns beat reporter, publicly questioned Shedeur Sanders' actions. Not his throwing accuracy, not his game tape, but his decision to help people. In her words, there was no need for him to be out there. Quarterbacks, she argued, should be focused on training camp. That's the job. Community involvement? That's someone else's lane. The internet didn't take long to react. Her comments were clipped, quoted, and dissected across social media. Was she really saying that helping victims of a devastating fire was a distraction? That showing up for families who had just lost their homes was unnecessary? But she didn't stop there. She doubled down, claiming that efforts like Shedeur's were ultimately irrelevant to a quarterback's responsibilities. She lumped him in with names like Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, suggesting all quarterbacks should be locked into one thing: football. Nothing else. That stance hit differently. Because while she spoke about priorities, Shedeur was showing what real priorities looked like: families, kids, community. Her comments revealed something deeper: the outdated belief that athletes should stay in their lane, play, perform, stay silent. But Shedeur wasn't having it. He didn't fire back with angry tweets or press statements. He let his actions speak for themselves. While some tried to reduce him to a stat line, he was out there, shaping lives. What Mary Kay and others like her missed was simple. Being a quarterback isn't just about arm strength and passing yards. It's about presence, influence, leadership. And sometimes, that leadership doesn't happen on a field. When a tragedy hits, people don't look to stat sheets. They look to leaders. And Shedeur Sanders stepped into that role without hesitation. His decision to support the community wasn't a distraction. It was a responsibility. A quarterback doesn't just lead a team. He represents something bigger. And in that moment, Shedeur was the face of hope for people who had just lost everything. Critics argued that his time would have been better spent running drills or reviewing plays. But how do you measure the impact of a child smiling again after trauma? Or a mother finally feeling like someone sees her pain? The truth is, Shedeur did more for those families in one weekend than 100 practice reps ever could. This wasn't a media stunt. It wasn't for likes or camera time. The way he moved, quietly, humbly, without expecting applause, proved exactly why the criticism didn't land. He wasn't just doing charity. He was building trust. And that trust, it matters, especially in communities that are too often overlooked until something goes wrong. Mary Kay framed his actions as irrelevant. But to the people at Rainbow Terrace, Shedeur wasn't just a quarterback. He was a lifeline, a reminder that someone, somewhere, still cared enough to show up. While the criticism circled and the headlines tried to stir controversy, Shedeur Sanders stayed silent. But silence didn't mean inaction. In fact, his next move was louder than any statement he could have made. Instead of clapping back, he poured his energy into action. Shedeur organized a full-scale community event designed not for show, but for healing. He didn't just send a donation or tweet about support. He showed up, boots on the ground, face-to-face with the very people affected by the Rainbow Terrace fire. And he didn't come alone. Cleveland's own standout defensive tackle and boxer, Montana Love, joined him, adding more energy and visibility to a cause that desperately needed it. The message was clear. This wasn't about football. This was about family. He used his Instagram not to defend himself, but to invite others in. Pull up, help out, give what you can. And the community did. Donations rolled in, kids lit up, families felt seen. All of it unfolded not because a team told him to, but because he chose to. No interviews, no viral rants, just results. He made it crystal clear, real leadership doesn't always speak, it acts. And that kind of response, it cuts deeper than any headline. While others debated his priorities, Shedeur made his choice loud and clear: people first, always. For the residents of Rainbow Terrace, Shedeur Sanders wasn't a trending story. He was a real person who walked into their broken reality and brought light with him. While the media debated his priorities, the families who lost everything saw something else entirely. A young man who chose empathy over ego. The event he hosted wasn't polished or commercial. It was raw, real, and full of heart. Kids who hadn't smiled in days were laughing again, running around with painted faces, eating free food, and soaking up the kind of joy they hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't just about resources, it was about presence. One parent said, "This is the first time since the fire that I felt like someone actually cares." Another resident, holding back tears, shared how her children hadn't stopped talking about the event since Shedeur left. And it wasn't just his name they remembered. It was his warmth, his time, his attention. Boxer Montana Love put it best. Shedeur doesn't just talk about making a difference, he shows up. That's rare. He didn't come for the applause. He came for the people. His hands weren't in his pockets. They were handing out meals, giving hugs, and listening to stories. And for the kids, meeting Shedeur wasn't just exciting, it was unforgettable. For them, he wasn't just a quarterback, he was hope in human form. When Shedeur Sanders says community over everything, it's not just a slogan, it's a mindset. It's how he moves, how he leads, and how he lives. While others get caught up in the noise of stats, schedules, and status, Shedeur continues to invest in something deeper. People. Not for clout, not for press, but because he knows that real impact outlasts game day headlines. He's said it many times. Cleveland isn't just where he plays. It's where he finds peace. It's where he connects. It's where he feels grounded. And that's not just talk. Shedeur has been known to show up at schools unannounced, just to surprise the kids and let them know someone believes in them. No cameras, no announcements, just authentic connection. In a world where athletes are often reduced to contracts and performance, Shedeur's actions remind us what influence can really look like. It's not always flashy. Sometimes it's just being there when no one else will. Critics like Mary Kay Cabot framed his actions as irrelevant. But for the people he helped, it was everything. Because when your home is gone, when your routine is shattered, and when your hope is fading, having someone show up and say, "You matter," is powerful. That's why the community sees him differently. They don't just see a quarterback, they see a protector, a friend, a leader. Shedeur could have stayed in the gym, perfecting throws. Instead, he chose to perfect something else, his purpose. So here's the real question. What do we actually expect from our athletes? Should they stay locked into their training facilities, laser-focused on stats and playbooks, ignoring the world outside the lines? Or should we celebrate the rare ones who step off the field and into real life, using their platform to bring light when it's needed most? Because that's exactly what Shedeur Sanders did. He didn't just throw a football. He threw himself into a community in crisis. He didn't chase attention. He created change. And yet, there are still voices trying to twist his intentions, frame his compassion as distraction, or label his leadership as misplaced. But maybe the problem isn't what Shedeur did. Maybe it's that he's doing something others are too afraid or too unwilling to even attempt. He didn't ask for credit. He asked for unity, for healing, for love. And maybe that's the kind of leadership we should be praising more often. So what do you think? Is Shedeur Sanders setting a new standard for what it means to lead, not just as an athlete, but as a human being? Or is there still a belief that athletes should stick to sports and stay in their lane? Do his actions inspire real change, or are they being misunderstood by a media machine that's still stuck in the past? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts, because this conversation isn't just about football. It's about influence, empathy, and the kind of future we're building together. Community over everything. That's the message, the mission, and maybe the movement.